Alright, let's see what we get. Okay. With BloodMage is interesting. Alright, so we're gonna solo self-found and witch. So we start off by killing Hillock, grab some loot from him, and head into town where we can get our first skill gem from Renly, which I'll put into Contagion to start us off with the leveling process, as I can't get Frost Mages until about level 14. We then killed Bria and the Devourer, who dropped some level 2 skill gems to upgrade Contagion. And killed the Witch in Grelwood to get our first support gem for Swift Affliction on Contagion. After killing the Bramble, we head into the Red Veil to kill the Rust King and grab the 3 runed pieces, also receiving our first level 3 skill gem, which I put into Essence Drain for more single target damage. I did put in other support gems, but I won't talk about them until we start the Frost Mage build, as it isn't necessary. After forgetting to grab the spikes from Renly, we come back and free the Hooded Stranger. Kill the Rotten Druid and head into the cemetery to kill Asinia and Draven after walking past his boss room about 3 times. Oh, it's right here. Damn. After killing Lachlan, we head over to Crowbell to get our first 2 free skill points in the game. Then we head into Freythorn, probably one of the more annoying maps in the game, and naturally I get lost and turned around. I'll get 2 right next to each other, and then the third one is in some random location on the mount. No, here it is. Okay. We get our first spirit gem from the King of the Mist, and I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to use it for yet, so I just saved it for later. Arctic armor might help us. We're going to be going cold anyway, so it might be worth it with the Frost Mage, so we'll see. 2 more levels and we can get our Skeletal Mage. Then moving into the farm, I almost get one-tapped by a pack. Oh, that was close. Then we go over to Una's hut, grab her loot, and get another free 2 passive points. So we hit level 14, which means we can finally start working on our Frost Mage build and start heading to the Executioner, but not before I get stuck in the corner of the map. Uh-oh. Oh, we're stuck. Let me out. What is happening right now? Wow, really? We take down the Executioner and head back to town to start working on our build. Back in town, we got our Frost Mages from a level 5 gem I had saved in my stash from another run, and happened to have 2 decent Rattling Scepters to choose from the store. Ultimately, I went with the one with the less spirit since I wanted to be able to run Arctic armor and 2 Frost Mages at the same time while getting better damage. For my first 2 support skill gems, I went with Magnified Effect for more area of effect, and Spell Cascade so that my Frost command for the skeletons would have more projectiles, which would mean more enemies getting frozen and more freeze buildup. I went ahead and grabbed Cold Snap to help shatter the enemies and give me a little more extra damage whenever my Frost Mages would freeze an enemy. And put the Zenith support gem in there for an extra 30% damage. And Concentrated Effect for more area damage. I also grab Arctic armor, but I'm probably going to end up changing that pretty shortly. After going through the first part of the manor, I forgot about changing my passive, so we went back and I took the chaos damage off that I initially got and put it into minion damage, and we started working up towards the first part of our minion tree and getting minion health and some minion damage. So at this point the build was running pretty smooth. For just starting out, the damage was pretty decent. I guess I want to go ahead and preface before this build starts that I am no Path of Exile build master or wizard or whatever, so there's going to be a lot of trial and error in this. Also, I guess like the plan for this build as of right now is to just be able to get through cruel difficulty and beat the end game. If I do make something that's worthy of mapping, essentially, or I mean, I'm gonna try to make it to where it's worthy of mapping. But if it does go well and the build is working out pretty good, the idea would be to try and start taking on some pinnacle bosses with it. So hopefully we can get to that point. So now we take on our first boss with the minion build, and it goes pretty good. The only issue as of right now with it, I guess, is that my minions die super easily, which, I mean, that'll just come with time as we grow the passive tree. But other than that, it really did some pretty decent damage, so I was happy with it at the moment. Obviously, there's things I can do to get more damage out of this, and we'll just be working at it over time and, you know, as the journey goes on. But this was a pretty good first boss encounter with it, I guess. So here we are at the final boss of Act 1. I was a little concerned going into it because I didn't know how well the Frost Mages would do against him with his protection to Frost, and against the part where all the werewolves surround us. But it ended up working out pretty good. They did decent damage, and we were able to get it done first try.
But first, please, stop the madness. As you wish.
Now moving into Act 2, we talk to Zarka and start heading towards the Wrathbreaker to take him down so we can get into the caravan. We got another level 5 skill gem that I put into Pain Offering to give my minions more damage. I pick up Sacrificial and Lamb to put in my Skeletal Warriors so that it would use them for the Pain Offering instead of my Skeletal Mages. We made our way through the Maudon Quarry and arrived at Ruja, or Ruja, however you say it, where we ended up dying quite a lot. At this point, the confidence was pretty low about the build, but I knew mainly it was just because I didn't have a lot of movement speed. I should have rolled some boots with movement speed in order to avoid her one-shot hammer skill, whatever it is, but we ended up taking her down. Moving on to Bablo the Trader, we only died twice during this fight, which was nice because normally this is a fight where I'll die quite a lot, so my confidence was boosted a bit with the build after taking her down. Back in town, we pick up Frostbomb, not for the damage, but just for the cold exposure alone to bring down the enemy's cold resistance. We take down the first phase of Jamanra, no issues, being the first boss we hadn't died to in Act 2. We grabbed our first level 7 skill gem from Zakra, which I couldn't use yet, but we ended up putting into Hypothermia to get a better cold resist debuff on the enemies. I also put the Persistent skill gem in there just to make it last a little longer. And grabbed the Heightened Curse support gem to give it some more magnitude. We put Execute on our Skeletal Frost Mages for 50% more damage while enemies were on low life. This worked well when I used their command ability, as it would bring most enemies down to half health. I then put Magnified Effect into Hypothermia and switched Persistence into Cold Bomb, as I wanted it to stay up longer to expose more enemies. Now it was time to fight Ekbab and Iktab. This was one of the two fights in Act 2 that I was concerned about, but we only died one time, and the second fight went pretty smoothly. There were times where I was trying different things with support gems. Like at this point, I tried Scattered Shot in Skeletal Mages, and it ended up being really bad. So there's going to be a lot of those times that I probably just cut out and don't show you. So if you happen to see different skill gems in my slots, chances are they didn't last that long, which is why I didn't bother talking about them or showing them. We then went on to fight Kabbalah. I don't know if anyone else has this issue with fighting her, but like kind of towards the end of the fight, she stopped taking any kind of frost like effect, like chill or freeze or anything. And I've had builds before where she would just stop taking damage altogether. So I don't know if that's some kind of glitch or if it was just for me or what it is, but I mean, let me know if you've had that issue with her before. Regardless, we take her down and we get our book for another 2 free passive skill points, which we use to start making our way towards our next minion tree. I had another spirit gem, which I went ahead and used and grabbed Mana Remnant and got rid of Arctic Armor. Mana was kind of becoming an issue with me spamming certain abilities. Moving into Azarian, we took him down first try. I ran out of health potions towards the end of the fight and had to clutch it up. We find the medallion location where I go ahead and grab mana recovery from Flask. Moving on to the Colossus, this fight went a lot better than I anticipated. We ended up taking him down first try, but I have had glitches before with this boss where he just stops taking damage altogether. I don't know if it's his hitbox or what it is, but it kind of happens at random. Fortunately, we didn't have it happen this time. I did die at the very end after getting swarmed by a bunch of ads, which for some reason dying at the end, I don't know if this is supposed to be intended, but you lose all your loot except for the quest item that you're supposed to be getting, so we ended up losing a skill gem, which was pretty unfortunate. I hope they fix that if it's not intended. I started rolling for a new Rattling Scepter as I wanted to try and get more spirit and more damage out of it. But instead, I used all of my luck to roll a unique one that I would never use in the game. I didn't really have much luck rolling a better Rattling Scepter, but I did find a amulet in the shop, which gave me an extra 31 spirit. At this point, I kind of knew that stacking up spirit was going to be the way to go for this. The more skeletal mages and the more command casts that I was going to have available was going to be a huge damage increase for us. Being able to run an extra mage went a long way for us in this, and we were able to spam our ability a bit more often. I then went on to fight the twin birds that dropped me this unique tiara that consumes corpses and heals us from them, but I soon realized afterwards that freezing enemies, and whenever they shatter, it doesn't make a corpse. So I held on to it for now because it was still better than my current tiara, and we actually ended up holding on to it for a while before getting a new one. We find the letter and then bring it to Shambrin to give us another 2 free passive points. We find the Shrine of the Sisters to get our free plus 10 lightning resistance, and then it was on to the next boss fight where we fought Torgol. This fight went really well. One of the biggest things that helped with this is that he was so large, so a lot of my extra ice crystals from the frost command could easily hit him, so we ended up melting him pretty quickly. Onto the final part of Act 2, we moved on to the Dreadnought, which I find to be one of the harder parts in the entire game, given that all the enemies pretty much just jump right on top of you and it's very minimal spacing to walk around in, but we moved through it actually really well with this build and didn't really have any hiccups. Moving on to Jamandra, the final boss of Act 2. It went fairly smooth. I died one time due to my own fault and not having enough health potions of running in between 2 of the twisters. But the second time around we went ahead and killed him. But I find this fight to be a good benchmark to see where our damage and everything else kind of lies. And I was pretty happy with how it went because this fight generally is kind of a run killer for me. A little bit. Not really a run killer, but it kind of makes me have to rethink everything that I've done. And luckily, we must be doing something right because it went pretty smooth. At the end of Act 2, I completely forgot about our trials, so we went ahead and did everyone's favorite part of the game. I hated these at first, but the more I did them, the easier it got, and now running through the first, I guess, tier of your trial for me now is super easy. I then realized at the very end of the trial, fighting the boss, how weak he actually is, and we ended up melting him down pretty quickly. So we get our ascendancy We have to go into life remnants first before you can go anywhere else in the BloodMage tree. And it was going to be interesting because it's a mechanic that I had never really messed with. It was going to be kind of cool to try and build around it. And life remnants pretty much works the same way as mana remnants, where you have like a 25% chance for a life remnant to drop, and when you pick it up it'll give you health back, but it'll also overfill your health pool and it'll essentially double it. So if I have 500 health, it'll give me 1,000 health. But now all of our skills also use health, and this plays a role a lot more in Act 3. As I said, it's a mechanic I never worked with before, so I had to change some things around. Moving into Act 3, we start off by killing Root Dredge, and getting used to the Life Remnants ability was a little weird at first, but it didn't take that long. In this first portion of Act 3, a lot of things were resistant to cold, so it was a little tough getting through here and there. After killing the shaman in the swamp, we go ahead and get our free Lesser Jeweler's Orb, and we go ahead and put that in the Frost Mages. I didn't really know what I wanted to put in there in particular yet, so we just kind of waited until we got a level 2 support gem drop in order to fill that space. We took down Silverfist for another 2 free passing points, and then we entered the Venom Crypts. I went ahead and picked up Frostwall, but I really only kept it on for a short amount of time, as I felt like it was kind of doing a disservice to like the build itself. The idea was to try and use the Skeletal Frost Mage as our main skill and our main source of damage. We'll probably use Frostwall eventually, maybe in Cruel difficulty, but as for right now, I don't know. It kind of felt like to me it was defeating the purpose, I guess you could say, of the whole challenge idea of this. I know eventually I'll have to use other skills to really get anywhere with the build, as I don't think Frost Mage alone is going to carry us into Ubers or anything like that. But we'll see. It kind of just depends on how things go through Cruel difficulty. I also wasn't really using Cold Snap and Pain Offering almost at all anymore at this point. I really didn't even use Cold Snap pretty much ever in Act 2. So you'll see those disappear from my skill bar eventually, probably closer towards the end of Act 3. But just know that, yeah, I really wasn't using them at all during Act 3 or Act 2. Then we got the Snake Venom, gave it back to Servi, and I selected the Elemental Threshold option because mana wasn't really an issue and stunning wasn't really that big of a deal either. We took down the Witch in the Azek Bog, which dropped us a Gemrot Skull for a free Spirit Gem and plus 30 maximum to our Spirit. I then tried something here with Blasphemy. I was going to try and put Hypothermia as just an aura, and it didn't really make that much sense to do. I planned on going into the BloodMage part of the tree where all curses are permanent anyways, and the reason I was going to go into that is because later on I start to notice how much Hypothermia hurts me, essentially, because all our skills use life, and Hypothermia had a really high usage cost, so this didn't really end up doing it for me, so we quickly switched off of Blasphemy and just added another Skeletal Mage, so now we had 4 total. We then took down the Chimera to get our Inscribed Ultimatum. I then went to do the Temple of Chaos so that we could go ahead and get our permanent curse ability. Unfortunately, we died to the boss in the first run, but the second one went a lot smoother, and we got the Chimera as the final boss, which I find is one of the easiest ones out of all of them. And we also got a Divine Orb drop from him, which I thought was pretty lucky. At this point, I also realized that upgrading Frostbomb wasn't helping with giving it more exposure, so I went ahead and just stopped leveling it so that the cost of it wouldn't keep going up and we wouldn't be essentially hurting ourselves anymore. I went back to town and started rolling for new Rattling Scepters, but I decided to switch to a different kind of scepter. I chose the Discipline Scepter as it gives me a boost of energy shield as well as my minions, and I wasn't using the Skeletal Warriors anymore for any reason since I hadn't been using Pain Offering, so it was definitely a much better upgrade. And we were also able to grab another Skeletal Frost Mage, bringing us up to 5. We take down Blackjaw to get the Flame Core, and now it was time to move into the Sanctum. At this point we were starting to steamroll with our 5 mages. I was able to pretty much spam abilities pretty consistently. We just had to be careful of health, obviously, and I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I did get rid of Mana Remnant at one point because I wasn't going through mana that quickly, because we were essentially losing more health than we were mana because of the ability spamming, but it never really ends up being that much of an issue for the rest of Act 3. We got the 2 generators going, and then it was time to take on Skeletal, who went down without much of a fight. After grabbing the large core, we make our way into the waterways where we finally get our first level 2 uncut support gem. I then get bidding and put it into our Frost Mages so that the command skill does an extra 30% more damage. I then use some Gem Cutter's Prisms on the Frost Mages to reduce their reservation. Upon entering the Drowned City, we get another level 2 support gem drop, which I use for Strip Away and put it in Frost Bomb for an extra 20% increase effect of exposure. We grab the Apex of Filth waypoint and start making our way towards the Molten Vault. Getting to the end of the Molten Vault, we run into Mechtal, and I wasn't worried about our damage at this point as we were kind of skating through, so he went down pretty easily. We head back to the Apex of Filth, take down the Queen of Filth. Then we head into the Temple of Kopek. We take down Quetzal and then make our way to Utsul, where we pick up the Sacrificial Heart. We then took on Viper, one of the harder bosses in the game, and we only died one time, and the damage was pretty good, so it wasn't that bad. After entering Agarat, I went ahead and put Focused Curse into Hypothermia for reduced activation delay. And at this point, the current setup of skill gems and support gems would be what I used for the rest of the first playthrough, and probably going to be the same for a lot of the second playthrough. We stab the Sacrificial Heart to get our next 2 free passive skill points, and then move into the final section of the game. After finishing the final act and moving into Cruel difficulty, that's going to do it for part 1, and I'll see you guys in the next one.